I had written a letter, and I got this response back. All I gave them was the VIN of my 67 Cougar. And when they wrote back, they had all this extra information on it. I go, how would they know that? You can't get that out of the VIN. And then I started thinking, the only way they could know that is if they had more information. We were just barely halfway done. And he said, well, tomorrow we can finish up the cars and then we can get all the trucks. And I said, I don't really want the truck stuff.
Why would you say that?
Because I was dumb. We do have Mercury truck information. I think what you're thinking of is the 67 and 68 crew cabs.
Yeah. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ford Era. Today we are here at Marti Auto Works in El Mirage, Arizona. And if you guys don't know Marti Auto Works, you're in for a treat. This place is amazing, and Kevin is an absolute legend. Alright, everybody, we found Kevin. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I am just so excited to be doing this tour, and we've visited you a couple times, but we've never actually made a video tour.
Well, we're glad to show you around a little bit. We got a lot of cool pieces of history. If you like history, I know it wasn't always the most interesting subject in school, but really there's some fascinating history here. I'm going to start right here at the very beginning. Now, these are drawings that are actually the original drawings that were used to produce 69 and 70 Mustangs and Cougars at the Dearborn Assembly Plant. Now,
wow.
Every vehicle, things like this would have been done. These are basically how-to. There's things like the schedule here that shows if you're gonna bake the paint at this temperature, you have to hold it in there for that long, and so on. Just all these different specifications, because when it came to building the vehicles, someone had to tell someone else how to do it, what to do, how to make sure that everything fit together. It's really amazing that 10,000 pieces can come together in less than 24 hours and produce a whole running vehicle.
It is. And now we're kind of stepping into, this is a museum or a dealership in ways.
What it is this is set up to look like a Ford dealership that would have existed around 1907. It's obviously some of these cars aren't period correct, but all of the items that you see around are actually from that era. And these aren't reproduction pieces. These are actual items that really were in dealerships that over the course of decades we wound up going hunting for, or in some cases when eBay came into existence, that made it easier to find some of this stuff. then just trading with friends who also have like-minded collections.
Oh
and
yeah.
such.
I mean, you're making me now need to start looking for stuff. Like I have to get my own shelf that has, you know, the Ford leather and vinyl. I mean, this is just, to me, this is the coolest stuff. I don't know why I geek out. Like, look at this. That's just the coolest thing.
Yep, these are all the chemicals. I can still remember in the when I first got my first car in 1973 and going to the Ford dealer and picking up all these kind of items. I'd wash my car. I would never go down to the local store, the local car store. It had to be Ford. I would only, because I had a convertible top, so I had to use the thing that came with the little cleaner for little scrub brushes that have the little Ford logo on them. You can't get this stuff anymore, but back then, you know, for cleaning and scrubbing.
What's funny is how much of this stuff probably just got thrown out. And now, like, I mean, I bet this is probably worth, you know, $20, $30, but like, you don't even see it at a swap meet anymore because no one thought to keep it.
That's exactly right. And the other problem is that when they were done with it, they never thought, even an empty can, some of these cans are empty, but some of them, that's completely full. Can't you feel the weight? Cans, you'd think, how did that can of permanent antifreeze from the 1960s never get opened?
Yeah. It's still good too, I'm sure.
Could be. But that's another funny thing about this stuff is a lot of these chemicals aren't even legal anymore.
Oh yeah.
You cannot, this kind of antifreeze, it's got chemicals in it, just like the fluid they use for filling your power steering.
Or air conditioning.
Or air conditioning, the R12, which if you can scan over here real quick, there's an original R12 Freon.
Oh yeah.
That's never been opened.
Would you look at that? A Ford one. Man, this is too cool.
Another thing that happened is that Ford marketing changed over time, and so they would, when you were like cleaning your car with a polishing cloth, they started out with these old wax treated cloths that had the Rotunda logo on them. Then they eventually went to what you're familiar with the Ford Oval one. But originally they came in cans. Way in the back is the oldest one from like the late 50s, and then started moving into the mid 60s, and then by about 1968 they'd gone to the blue can. But then they said, why are we spending money on a can that people use once and then throw away? So they started putting them in plastic shrink wrap to do it. The other thing, back then, when a Ford dealer would get their parts, it'd get shipped in these wooden containers. If you notice here, I don't know how easily you can read that, but it says Ford Autolite.
Yep.
And so they would ship these items. Your dealer, let me grab somewhere. There it is. The dealer would get their weekly stock order pad, and it would have all of the part numbers that were available at the time, and then you just put down the quantity of how many you wanted,
and it would show up.
Someone would look through all of this paper for every order because no computers going on.
There was a ledger for everything,
and so it was all done manually, and then it ultimately wind up in a box like that would then get sent to the dealer, and then he'd sit there and go against his sheets. And check,
got this, got that.
Check to make sure all the inventory came in. They just had lots of fun, cool little. This doesn't apply here in Arizona, but for the guys that were back east, you'd spray this de-icer, and then it just had the little scraper built in, and then this one for cut through where the ice was real thick.
Oh yeah.
So just all those cool little
I love it. This little, I mean, look at this touch-up paint selection. Wow.
Yep, get a load of some of those colors from the 50s down at the bottom. And then as paint chemistry became better, they got more brilliant with their colors. And of course, you know, we look at cars today and how vivid the clear coats, tinted clear coats and such are. But back then it was like, well, that was all you could do with paint technology. And then they get better and better with pigmentation to develop more and more vibrant colors as time went on. Yeah. So this area is akin to the dealership counter that the customer would come up to and say, hey, I need some items. And so he would go to down at the end. I realized a little inconvenience, maybe.
Oh, we can walk around. I'll meet you over there.
He'd go through his parts books. You'd be sitting over there and you'd say, yeah, what year and model, and he'd flip through the pages and he'd wind up finding the item that you wanted, and then they'd go to their stock on their shelf.
They would go upstairs.
Let's run upstairs.
I've never been up here yet, guys. We're going together. This is probably exactly how they had it also. They probably also used to have to climb stairs just like this. Oh, man, look at all of this NOS goodies.
Now, this is laid out just the way a Ford dealership would have had it laid out. So
really,
if I brought a Ford parts sales guy here and said, we need a steering wheel, he'd know the steering wheel basic number is 3,600, so he'd know to go down to the 3,600 shelf, which is down here at the end, because it would start with the 1,000s, 2,000s, 3,000s, 4,000s, and skip all down. So he'd go over here and he'd find, oh, there's the steering wheels.
That is so awesome. Ooh. A little tall. Man, that is so great. Wow.
Whereas the, see, like the 2000s were things like power steering, so various power steering hoses and such. 1000 was wheels, so these are things like some of the medallions that would have been on the cars. This one happens to be like a 67 Cougar styled steel wheel.
That's awesome. Little touch-up brushes.
Yep.
Huh. This is
trim ring assemblies, hubcaps, wheel covers, all of that in the 1000s section. And as you go along, you stepped into the things like we get into this section where we're into like carburetors and such. And of course, back then you could buy yourself a whole brand new carburetor, wouldn't you? Don't you wish you'd gone and done that back then, had a new one instead of having to rebuild it? But the rebuild kits are right down below it, with all of the parts inside and the little instructions for how to rebuild your carburetor.
So is this stuff now, this is just more on display, or you still sell some of this?
I don't sell any of this. This is all for my personal vehicles. I'm in the middle of restoring that 70 Cougar Eliminator right down there. And so there'll be various parts that I'll just pull off the shelves. Items that I always knew, when I was a little kid, I'd listen to old men. I always listened to adults. There was just a thing. I'd rather have hung around with an adult than I did kids my age. I don't know, it was just the way I was. But I'd hear all of these men say, I wish I hadn't sold my first car. I wish I had my first car. I'm so sorry I got rid of my first car. If I could find that again, I would get it. Well, that set in my mind a thing such that when I bought my first car, that brown one right there, 67 Cougar, I said, I'm never going to sell that car. And I then bought a second car, and then that was my third car, the Cougar Eliminator. And it's just that I restored it 45 years ago, and so it's kind of old and rickety and time to be, needs to be redone. But back then, I'm an engineer, and the company, and I wasn't married, I didn't get married until into my early 30s. So in my 20s, I got real nice paychecks, and what I would do is every other paycheck, I'd go down to the Ford dealer, and I was buying all these parts because I knew I'm going to keep the cars.
You keep it running.
And keep them running, and someday the parts won't be available. So I made sure.
That's good forethinking.
Everything from you look at, those are all boxes of weather strip down there.
Wow.
Yeah. You got things like extra console. Here's a whole bunch more weather strip and moldings. I made sure, because we're in Arizona, I made sure to have lots of air conditioning parts and dash pads.
Oh yeah.
Because they go bad. I even for the Eliminator had those comfort weave seats that you see in a lot of the cars and the trucks from back then. And so I even bought a loom of the original
oh wow,
comfort weave material.
That's
from
beautiful.
Back then. Because again,
yeah, you never know.
Down here, the heat rots all that. Anything that rotted, I made sure to buy, especially rubber type items, interior type items, because it doesn't rust here, but it sure gets all hard and brittle. So that was all the philosophy that was going on then.
And I'm sure a lot of people they see those big boxes behind it. What are those?
Oh, good question. We have, because of our contract that we have with Ford Motor Company, we have access electronically to every vehicle that they made from 1967 on, and then we have a lot of paper invoices we have about 10 million paper invoices that managed to survive. Unfortunately, not all the invoices survived. The ones that did, we do sell the originals to customers, but we won't check for you. The only way you can find out is you have to go to the website and then put in the information about your vehicle, and then if we have the invoice, it'll list it as being there for sale. But yeah, we just walk over here and we'll pull a box out, and let's these are 79 Mustangs. Let's start with pulling this
So when
out.
somebody puts the order in, you or one of the guys that work here will literally just come out here and look through. Obviously it's organized, but
right. So you see, here's serial number 100001, and then it just steps through 100002 and 3 and so on. And
yeah,
it's just all in numerical order.
Wow.
Wish we had them all.
Yeah.
But at least electronic data we have for all of them.
And what's wild is like how many shelves, guys. He said 10 million copies, but
yep.
That's incredible. So what's the story? I know we said it on the podcast, but let's assume nobody heard it before.
Okay.
Let's tell them the story of how you ended up with 10 million pieces of, Ford documents.
Yep, good question. Most people that are familiar with these invoices call them Eminger invoices. The reason they call them Eminger invoices is because there was a lady that worked in Ford's legal department named Lois Eminger. And the way things work at Ford is, after a while, you can't save everything. They have to throw stuff away. Before they throw anything away, the legal department has to clear its availability for destruction. And Lois was into the little two-seater Thunderbirds, the 55 to 57 Thunderbirds. And so around 1962, when they were throwing away the 55 records, she asked her boss if she could have those invoices, and he checked. The legal department, well, there's no reason not to. We don't need them for tax purposes anymore. They always had to hold them for 7 years because of the IRS. After that, they could destroy them. So they said, sure, you can have them. And so she took home the 55s, then the 56s, then the 57s, and then some things happened in her life, like her husband dying, and she kind of lost interest for a number of years, about 5 years. And then she picked up again in 1969 with the 1962 Thunderbird invoices. So she started saving those. Then in 1972, when they're throwing away the 65 Mustangs, they come to her and says, would you like these 65 Mustang invoices? Well, you know, they built way more Mustangs than they did the Thunderbirds. And when she asked them, well, how many boxes are there? And when they told her the quantity, she had to say no, because she was storing them in a little pool room at her house. Why she had a pool in Detroit, Michigan, I don't. She told me they get to swim in it for about 5 weeks out of the whole year.
That's funny.
But they had to have a pool room for it, so they had this space in the pool room, and that's where she kept the invoices. So as time went on, she said no to the 65 Mustangs. She did take the 65 Thunderbirds. And as time went on, she would just get a hodgepodge of various invoices, certain years, certain models, and could have had it all, but she didn't have a place to keep it. With time, a friend of hers, Jim Schmidt, had started National Parts Depot, which probably everybody has shopped there. And Jim had this huge warehouse, so he let her start keeping the boxes there. Now that meant that stuff that was already in the trash wasn't gonna
get out of the trash.
It wasn't gonna unbury itself. But she did save what she could, and we've got invoices that go up to about 86. About that point, the whole Ford system.
Right, so we're back to surface level. So you were telling us about 86, 87.
Yeah, starting with 87, Ford changed the vendor who manufactured the window stickers and other labels that were used on the vehicles. And with that change, they paper copies we're starting to get a little more sophisticated electronically, and so paper copies were starting to go away. There were some still available, but for the most part, that was all being phased out. The dealers would still get paper copies because that's law. There has to be a paper, even to this day, there has to be a paper sticker on the vehicle of every vehicle sold in the country. But as far as Ford's record keeping, it just became an electronic enterprise.
So to go back to how we were middle of saying, so you would come here, the parts guys, you would figure out what all you wanted, and then he would go upstairs, get whatever it was, come back and get it, and then what else is over here?
A lot of people, again, keeping in mind this is like a Ford dealer, and so you'd have to have the customer waiting area. And so in the customer waiting area, Ford had another company that they owned called Philco. And some of the dealerships would have Philco items on display, and that included things like, you ever seen a Philco Ford refrigerator?
No, but now I need to find one. That thing will cool your drinks down faster than any other refrigerator.
I bet it will. I have one in my office that still works.
Really?
I keep my Cokes and Dr. Peppers in.
That's fantastic.
This is color TV, Philco Ford.
That is too cool.
The stereo systems, this was their idea of state-of-the-art future design. And this one actually still works. You can see the neat, cool display there.
Oh man,
sounds pretty good for
it does. I'm just gonna turn it off so we don't get in trouble with the music.
Good point.
But that is so cool. It sounds great.
Yep. It sure does.
Wow, this is amazing. Look at these. I mean, this must be from the 80s or late 70s.
No, this is 71.
Yep. Man, this... Now I know I need to start looking for Philco stuff. I had no idea.
Yep. Oh, and that, it doesn't end there, even though we got all these cool TVs and stereos and such. They also had this cabinet was filled with items.
Man, look at these. That is too
Little portable
cool.
transistor radios in grabber colors.
Looks like you got a couple extras. I might need to talk you out of one.
Yeah, that might be kind of hard to do. But you can find them on eBay for $30.
Oh, good. All right. Now I know where I'm going to go on eBay. Dude,
Yep.
this is so awesome.
Now down there, that TV, the first battery-powered portable TV was developed by Philco Ford engineers. That's
No
the original
kidding.
box that it came in. This is a brand new TV that never got used.
Wow.
And
I love all of these. I mean, this is the patches, the plates, the stickers. They just don't do cool stuff like this anymore.
no, and here, let me show you something.
Is that Tasca Ford?
It is Tesla Ford.
Oh my gosh. That is so cool. My buddy bought Bob Tasca's actual 69 Torino.
Nice, very nice. So Ford tried, I like to call this the Sony Walkman of the 60s. They developed this ultra miniature record player.
Wow.
And they had these,
You got Neil Diamond.
they had these records. They were called hip pocket records, and you see they're nice and flexible. So you could stick them in your back pocket. You could put 50 of those in your back pocket and be the local DJ at the beach. Hey, what do you guys want to hear? Just pull it out, put it on there, start playing it.
That is fantastic.
Now, let me show you another fun miniature record player that they had.
I want to see that that poster. That poster looks so groovy.
Which poster?
That larger one right over here.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's pull all of these off. All the psychedelic. See, this is advertising the hip pocket records,
That is so cool.
which is what all of these are.
Oh, those are all the records itself.
They were sold in vending machines.
No kidding. I'll come back here. It'll be a little easier.
Yep. And
Wow. I got you, babe.
this hasn't even been opened.
So, just years and years of collecting, huh?
Yep. Now, the one that I don't have is Beatles Yellow Submarine. Typical price, $1,400.
Oh boy.
Probably won't be buying that one.
Nope. But you had a couple other Beatles, it looked like.
Yeah, I do have quite a collection of various ones. But let
Can
me show you something.
I see which one? I'm just curious how all the different packages look. I love the vintage packaging. I mean, there's nothing like this stuff. Oh, man. Neil Diamond's my mother's favorite.
Yeah.
This is so fun. So do you remember these actual records?
I remember all of these songs. Yep, this is my time period. Grew up in the 60s.
This is so cool. So a lot of this stuff, they were giving it out at the dealerships, or you would buy this at the record store?
These were actually, what Ford tried was vending machines at like public places where you'd see candy machines, and they would advertise this record player for only $9.99, and then these vending machines would have these in. It was such a flop that after 18 months they scrapped the entire program.
No way.
Only available from kind of like late 67 into early 69.
I think
Which
this
is why
might...
these songs are all from that time.
Is this the best sounding one?
This is something we're going to get to in just a moment.
Okay,
That's a
okay.
surprise. There you go. Anyway, yeah, just all these various
This is amazing.
artists and collected all through the years. But we're gonna go down to where some of the car models are and take a quick look at this 67 Shelby.
Oh man, original AMT.
Yep.
That is so cool. Rest in peace, Gene Winfield. I didn't know for a long time that Gene Winfield was the original owner of AMT.
Yep.
I thought that was the coolest thing.
Now, this came with a record inside of it.
No way. And that's record.
What that record is.
And it would play on that record player.
Yes. Now, my treat for everybody listening is, this is another one of the Philco Ford record players that would also play AM radio. And you'd take this record.
Wait, the paper?
Yeah, it's just a paper.
No way.
7,120 miles an hour. We're now approaching turn 2, 1/4 gear. Swing way to the left, making a constant radius turn. And we head for turn 3.
So what this is, this was Carroll Shelby in a 67 Shelby on the Riverside Raceway, going through the motions, talking about I'm in this gear and going around turn 3 and such, and so he's describing the whole experience.
Wow.
Now, if you pan that up, that's the original Autolite flag that hung at Riverside.
The actual flag.
That is the actual flag that hung there.
Wow.
So I like that little tie-in.
That is so cool.
That's why most of these, all of these pieces are original. A whole lot of these pieces are actually original pieces of history, and we'll again get to some more of that as time permits.
That might be, I mean, how many of these do you think are even left? Because to hear that, like, it's so cool we were able to put that on this video.
Well, that's the only flag.
That is, wow.
The as far as these radios, I've not. You can once in a while find that radio. I've never seen this record anywhere else.
How did you come across it?
It's so long ago, I can't remember, because I was collecting this for now 50 years.
So it might have been a swap meet, it might have been a buddy, you never know.
It's just, some of the stuff sticks out in my mind where I got some, because a lot of it though, I didn't have a place to keep it. And so I would just put it up in our attic.
And you forgot you even had it.
It was like Christmas, you know. When I finally was able to get a place that I could put all this in, you keep pulling stuff. I didn't even know I had this.
How long have you been here?
We've been here now 13 years. We started in '82. We built another place a couple of miles from here back around 92, 93. Oh no, it was more like I forgot. It's about 98. And I started to try to put this stuff out, but I couldn't afford the space because the business was growing and we needed space for manufacturing. So I didn't really get to put all this stuff out. So it kind of got put back. Then when we finally moved here, we specifically designed this to have this space.
I love it. I mean, I love that you geek out on the stuff like I do, like the original AM, FM radio holders and all the Autolite parts for the oil filters and the little tune-up kits. I mean, this is so cool. And a leadership award. This is the kind of stuff that make enthusiasts. Wow, that's really cool. A Shelby lighter?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Dealer plans books. I mean, just the graphics on these books are incredible. Look at that, plates and napkins with Ford stuff on it. Now I know what I need to start going on eBay and looking for.
Yep, that's right.
This is just like, they don't make cool designs anymore.
No.
Like, that's just cool.
Yep. And no computer AI generating this.
No, just some guy.
Some guy, not with a computer. He's sitting there drawing this stuff all by hand, inking it by hand. Got to admire the way people were doing stuff back then.
Man,
this is a fun thing that the guy, when he was after he got all of your parts together and then he had to build it, he had a little calculator to do it. This is a calculator of the 60s. A lot of people didn't realize, wow, calculators from the 60s? Oh yeah. Look at that baby.
No, I wouldn't even know how to use that.
You had the little stylus here.
And you would punch the numbers.
And you would just sit there and move this stuff around according to the prices, and then it would basically be adding up the numbers for you.
That's interesting. What's funny is I can remember my teacher saying, you'll need to know this stuff. You're not going to have a calculator in your pocket forever.
Yes.
Lo and behold.
Yep. We're still better off learning all that stuff, though.
I agree.
It teaches your brain to think in a certain way.
Well, now that we got past the parts counter, we have so much more to show them. Do you just come out here sometimes and just like play?
I do. It's still fun to just sit and reflect. Like here's a kind of corny one too. So your dealership sold shock absorbers, and to make the point, this is a new Autolite shock absorber. And so you'd sit down in the seat and go, see, it just slowly goes down.
That's really funny. Oh, that's fantastic.
And then rebounds slowly.
Even after all those years, it still works?
It's still working.
This is so great.
Original bin with original brochures.
So, tell us about your Cougar over here. You said it was your first car, but something is looking a little bit strange about this Cougar. I've never seen a Cougar convertible.
Not for 67.
No.
I bought the car, and then I met someone who had a 70 Cougar convertible, and she said that car would have been great as a convertible. Too bad they never made one. And I took that as a challenge. And so the day after I graduated high school,
What year?
1975, and it happened to be a Friday the 13th.
Oh boy.
And I went over to my girlfriend's house, borrowed her dad's circular saw with a carburetor blade on it, put it on, and I just sawed the roof off. This is what you do when you're 18, you know? And the problem with that was I couldn't open the doors anymore.
The body flexed.
Because you had that nice solid structure. Once you got rid of this part, it just flexed like that. So I couldn't open the doors. They had to kind of do the Dukes of Hazzard, routine to get inside the car. My girlfriend wasn't real happy because I had to help her to get on the passenger side. My guy that I bought all my parts from at the Ford dealer did all kinds of custom rod work, and he said, if you go buy a Mustang convertible with all of the special items that they put on a convertible, like inner rocker panels and the torque boxes that are underneath and various other stiffening items, he said, if you go buy one of those and get all those parts off, I'll weld them all in for you. So he did. And then my dad taught me about body work, so I modified these feature lines to, on a hardtop, this feature line wrapped up into the roof, and this one wrapped up into the back of the quarter window. So, but on convertibles, they would run these feature lines together. So I modified that to make that look like the real thing. And then decades later, I found out that they actually prototyped one of these cars.
Really?
The picture of it in the styling studio. And the nice thing was, oh, I did the feature lines just the way they had. So that was just a lucky accident.
Good minds think alike.
That's right. Now, this car also, Shelby, of course, built all these parts for the GT350 Mustangs. Lincoln Mercury had them build a handful for the Cougar.
No
And
kidding.
so you'll see Cougar valve covers, and over here the intake manifold has the word Cougar on it instead. And then,
And it's Shelby Cougar stuff.
yep, and then down below, I don't know if you probably can't get in there because of the lack of light, but
Yeah.
down there it's a Cougar deep sump oil pan. So it's got all of that stuff because they Trans Am raced this car. Not this.
Yeah,
but
this
the
style.
67 Cougar, which you can see, for example, that's Dan Gurney's up there, number 98, when they were racing. They did so well because they had Parnelli Jones and Dan Gurney, and Ford didn't want Mercury to beat them. Mustang won Trans Am in '67, but it only won by like 1 point. And they wouldn't have won. They told those guys, you have to hold back. It's kind of like the whole thing that happened with Le Mans in '66. You know, the make Ken Miles hold back, and that's just corporate reality.
Tell me about this wall.
Yeah, this is where we get into some more history. When they the performance Mustangs were GTs, you get the GT package, and so in '69 they wanted to take this design and carry it a little step further, and so they put this big stripe through the middle, and then it curled down, and it said down here, Super GT. Well, it sounds kind of hokey, doesn't it? And since this was the era of planes flying faster than the speed of sound, Mach 1, someone gets the idea of, hey, how about we call it Mach 1? And so they quick put on these stripes, and these are actually hand-cut letters, Mach 1. And they then took it to the board and said, we'd like approval to build it as instead of the Super GT, we want to build it as the Mach 1. And this happens to be what was actually shown to the board.
No way, that actual photo.
This is what the board saw when they approved
Wow.
the Mach 1 program.
That's so cool. I love all of this stuff.
Now,
What,
a lot of people are familiar with this little cartoon, Beep Beep My Ass.
Oh yeah.
The story behind it is a guy, a friend of mine, his name was Bill Holbrook. He was the second in charge of the racing program. His boss name was Jack Bassino, and he came up with this cartoon idea. And when they were bringing the Talladegas to Daytona, he happened to see the Chrysler guy, the head of the Chrysler racing program, pull up in his car. So he took a bunch of these stickers and he stuck them all over the windshield and then elsewhere on the car.
I wonder if
You might want to, the whole letter, just go to the top and then scan it down so everybody can actually read the story. It's a fun story.
That's hilarious.
So what happens is the Chrysler guy, instead of having a good sense of humor, he calls up Bill's boss, Jacques, and says, "This is a violation of trademark.
Oh, for the
Warner
road.
Brothers owns this, and we have permission. You don't have permission." And so Jacques tells Bill, "Destroy all of those." You have to get rid of all of them. We can't be sending them out to customers anymore. Get rid of all of them. Bill held back a handful of them, and it's kind of amazing to me that 40 years later, when we're having our opening of the place, he brought me this. This is one of the originals.
That's awesome.
And so I really treasure that, knowing that that was one of the originals. And of course, people have copied that since then.
Right,
you
but
know.
that's an actual.
But that's the one of the originals that were supposed to have gotten destroyed.
And it looks like you have a piece of the floorboard of the actual bullet.
That is the jumper car, which lived out the rest of its life in Baja, California, and because there's salt water on both sides of the Baja, California, it just rotted everything out of that car. And so when the owner of the car had me verify that it was the original car, and he'd already cut the whole floorboard out of it, I asked for a piece of it, along with, this is a piece of the original headliner. That who knows, there might be a couple of DNA molecules from Steve McQueen.
That's really neat.
So that was a fun little experience to do. This, first time I got to meet Carroll Shelby, I had him autograph this, because this is the air cleaner that winds up belonging on this car.
Okay.
They actually had to make a curved Cougar to fit this Hypo 289 air cleaner lid, and he signed it. And I used to take it to car shows, and one day I came over and I found that part of the signature was missing because someone decided to rub their finger on it. That's where I learned people won't keep their fingers on things.
Wow.
So I keep it under glass.
Yeah, I would too.
You know,
You got a couple more signatures, it looks like.
yeah, and in fact, one of my favorites is Linda Vaughn, Miss Hirsch Shifter. She's become real good friends with my wife. When Ford did this is the press release, the official press release, so she autographed that for us. And I like that because my Cougar Eliminator has a Hurst 4-speed shifter in it. And then the story of Jay is that when Jay was young, he bought this magazine, and when he read this story about Carroll Shelby, who you see on a 65 Mustang up there has signed, signed that. That was what got him into cars.
That magazine.
That magazine, that issue of that magazine,
Wow.
got him interested in cars. So he told us that, Shelley and he told us that story. And of course, you go to his collection, and
It's insane.
you've seen bits and pieces of it on the show, but he didn't even begin to show you. 1/3 of his collection is 100-year-old motorcycles, and another 1/3 of his collection are steam-powered vehicles. So he's just the coolest guy. He is a real enthusiast.
That is awesome. Wow. I could be here for hours.
Yep.
So this one's getting just a full restoration, huh?
Yep. My youngest daughter Nori and I just got her on a twirler, so we're getting ready to do the rotisserie thing. The first time I restored it, I did it all on my back, getting underneath it and scrubbing, getting everything in my eyes, and I don't feel it. I don't feel like doing things the hard. Work smart, not hard.
Absolutely.
So
We have the technology.
that's right. So we just got the engine pulled out a couple of weeks ago, and so get that all cleaned back up. Engine, everything was working fine with the car. It just, I made the mistake when I painted it back in the 80s. Clear coat was a new idea, but they didn't have UV stabilizers in it. And here in Phoenix, the sun is so hard, you see it cooked all of the clear coat off the top of the car. That's why everything down lower where the sun wasn't hitting it, it's still shiny. But everything on the top, it just baked it off. I mean, look what it did to that stripe kit. It just burned all that stripe kit off. So yeah, we're having fun getting that all back together. family affair. My youngest son Nate helped, pull it all apart. She's helping do that, and then my wife Shelley has said, because we've asked her to come, hey, you want to come over? Nah, I don't like doing that. What she wants to do is when we start sanding, that's what she likes doing.
There you go, the wet sanding and buffing.
No.
Sanding
the paint off. Not sanding for prepping for paint, but actually removing all. So it's like, that was, I was restoring a car back in '89, and I needed some help. And I mentioned it to everybody at church, and the next thing I know, she shows up, and we weren't going together or anything. It was just, she shows up and says, hey, I'll help. And so she's out there and she's helping sand away, getting all dusty everywhere, and I had to marry her.
You don't find a girl like that every day.
No, you do not.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's awesome. This is going to be really cool.
Which, speaking of honeymoon, I married her, and this is, you asked me about where I got all this stuff. This is a story I can remember because we honeymooned on the coast of Oregon. And as we're driving on Pacific Coast Highway, at the time, I'm sitting here stopping at every Ford dealership I can back then, trying to find old test equipment, old tools.
What's the reason why you have all of it?
Because it's all part of a Ford dealership, right? So this is all of the repair area, right down to an original alignment rack, a rotunda alignment rack.
Man, it's incredible because it's caveman stuff compared to today's technology.
Oh, yeah.
But for the time, this was just revolutionary.
That's right.
So
this is how they used to, when they would balance tires, they would spin them up on the car. This is the guy would stand on it, and the wheel would spin up, and they would put these on the wheels, and then they would keep dialing these things around until it quit vibrating, and then they'd read the numbers off of them to hammer the correct weights on the car.
The more you know.
Yeah. But now, let's go back to this. We're driving along Pacific Coast Highway, and I see a Ford dealership, and I'm thinking, oh, it's got that old look, like they might have stuff there. But I'm thinking, but I'm on my honeymoon, so I don't dare cock my head and look over at the dealer. I just pretend it's not there. And all of a sudden I hear this voice from the passenger seat, Shelley saying, yes, we can stop at the Ford dealership. And it turned out they had one of these little portable oscilloscopes.
That's awesome. What exactly is this for people that don't know?
This is for when, because of the nature of the ignition systems back then were completely mechanical, and you could tell the condition of the various parts that were used, like the condenser and the rotor and the points, by a wave signature that would get displayed on here. This would just electronically display the firing pattern, voltage versus time, and so you could look at that to see what the pattern was, to let you know, yeah, these points are burned out, or the condenser is doesn't have the correct capacitance anymore, so we need to replace that. So this was how you troubleshot those. You also could look at the voltage spike to first off see if your ignition coil was still putting out enough voltage. You could parade all the cylinders all at the same time, all 6 or 8, depending upon how many cylinders you had. And same thing, you could, if you saw that all of the voltages were like at 25,000 volts, but one of them was smaller than the others, you knew, no, it's not gapped correctly. So you knew immediately which, because you would know which cylinder number it was, then you could pull that plug out and re-gap that plug to give you that nice smooth running performance.
Really cool.
So that's what that tool did back then.
This is just amazing. Look
They
at
had all kinds of bizarre stuff, just like this. This is a radio tester.
Huh.
Yeah. You'd now
Yeah.
plug the
Plug
radio in here, and it was the speaker. And then on the other hand, you could also turn this thing on, and it would generate a signal that would feed back in. So you could figure out whether the speaker was bad or whether the radio itself was bad. This one here, alternator and regulator. You just unplug the that connector that goes to the voltage regulator. You plug this in, and it lights it up and tells you exactly which item is bad. And back then, the kind of detail it had on here was such that we even tell you things like, yeah, your stator's bad or your field's bad, your diode's shorted. And back then, they would take the alternator back apart and desolder a diode and put another diode in. You didn't just run down to the store and get a whole rebuilt one. You did that yourself.
My grandfather's first business was rebuilding starters and alternators, and he said that he had to go out of business because nobody would rebuild them anymore.
Exactly.
Everybody just bought a new one.
Yep.
But he's like, for 10 years, every day he'd recoil them, and
Yep. This is the way you tested batteries back then. Yeah. You take these probes out, stick them into each of the cells, and make sure that it moved into the green. You would just do one cell at a time, stepping across. And
I still think this rotunda alignment machine is so interesting, especially with this whole thing you have against the wall to actually see how it would work. I mean, this is before real technology, but they still could figure it out.
it was all manually done. That's right.
Wow.
This is how when you did an oil change, you would dial in how many quarts you wanted, and then just push this, and it would squirt the right amount in. Once it got the right amount, the dial went down to 0 and it would stop. So you just looked up the spec. Of course, almost everything Ford was 5 quarts. Didn't matter if it was 6-cylinder or a 427. Well, to a degree.
Yeah.
For the most part. But just another neat little trick that they really, for the time, it was pretty advanced, I think. Just like this arc welder. You just plug in whichever
Leads.
amperages you needed to do it. And you had that chart with that information. Flick that baby on and sit there and start going out to.
Are you still doing those $4.99 oil changes?
No, we don't. That's a fly spec. That's a $499 oil change.
With NOS oil, maybe.
Yeah.
That's probably not too far off.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, although you wouldn't want to put that stuff in nowadays because it doesn't contain all of the agents for cleansing the engine and such. Back then, those engines would just gunk up so badly.
This is amazing.
This stuff, I like this photo here. I ask people, what kind of car is that? And everybody says Mustang. I said, nah, look at the grill.
Oh, yeah. A Ford Cougar.
See, the trick was, that was all a trick. What they did was they showed those photos, and then the car magazines all wrote articles about how their specialty car is going to be called the Cougar. Then when they replaced it a month later and put the Mustang in, they all had to write another article. So they got double exposure. Wasn't that clever?
That is really clever.
So Gale's the man that designed that basic body. He unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, but just real great man. Dan Gurney signed that one for us in the gravel. Parnelli Jones, the Trans Am car. Not too long ago, that's Bill Ford's uncle, Benson, and he rode that car. We found that car, and so Bill's now got it in his collection.
Really?
Found another car, the 68 pace car, was a Torino. His dad was the one that drove it. But the week before, because his dad had to kind of do the tests around the tracks, Bill got to get out of school and
To go
sit
run
in the
it.
passenger seat.
Oh,
So he always
man.
had fond memories of that. And he says, I'd really like to have that again. So we were able to find that car in Iowa, and Colin Comer has just finished restoring it. So that's another cool story. Yeah.
That is really cool.
And
And
he's serious about cars. We're in good hands. He has said the day we build a Mustang without a manual transmission, he said, I'll cry a tear, because he's like me. I like, my cars are manual transmission convertibles for the most part. That's just my thing.
I love this. What are some of these up against the wall?
Yeah. So although, let's just as an aside, you'll like stop at that point. So I do like manual transmission convertibles, but we're also a truck family, and so here's our 75 Super Cab that we want to get back together. Got a 64 back there, and then there's another truck that's gonna get redone at some time. My oldest son, Rob, had that going for a while. Now they're gonna fix that up for his son.
So one of the things we haven't spoke about yet, but everybody knows you for, is for the actual Marti reports and for like stamping, new door tags, printing out, all that kind of stuff. I drove over.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at your door data plate.
Okay. So is this why they call you Mr. Data?
Yeah, that is why the nickname got applied to me. That, and I'm a Star Trek fan.
There you go.
So there's your door data plate, and people can observe on it that that's a 1978, because starting in 75 they'd list the year up through 81.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, so now we went into that building, which you want to tell me a little bit about it, or it's still kind of top secret?
No, it's not. It's not top secret, although we don't show you the actual processes that we use in there. They are proprietary. I call it mini mass production. You have to design things that look like mass production, but of course we can't make things on the scale of hundreds of thousands. So we've got all kinds of specialty equipment that I designed as an engineer to make, be able to make battery cables, spark plug wires, heater hoses, radiator hoses, fan belts, vacuum hoses, fuel line.
Data tags.
Data tags. Yeah. In fact, speaking of data tags, so we see this one on your truck, Solomon.
Oh yeah. And we're about 5 minutes later. This is cool.
This is us starting to stamp.
Wow.
That's.
I mean, you would not be able to tell the difference.
Yep, we are the company licensed by Ford to reproduce all of these, both these metal tags and then the Mylar style tags that were used back then.
I'm sure for the people that have never been on your website, they're probably like, oh, that tag is probably super expensive.
It's not.
And they have no idea. It's what, $40?
It depends upon the year and the model, but they range from $25 to $80 for the more modern ones with barcode and such on it.
Okay,
But
because you do up to what year?
we go all the way from 1949 all the way up to 3 years from the present. Ford licenses us to do everything up to 3 years from the present. If you've got a vehicle within the last 3 years, you have to go to your Ford dealer
To get the sticker.
Yeah, once it's older than that, they then send them to us.
So what's interesting, I haven't told them yet, but I'm restoring, well, they know this part. I'm restoring my 1997 Ford Expedition. So I repainted it. So I ordered the full door sticker from you.
Yeah.
So now after I put the paint on, I made sure to measure where it would go, and I'll put it back on so it'll look like it was never off.
It will indeed. It will look just, even the barcode, if you used a barcode scanner, we don't just make up something. It's the barcode that if you scanned it with a scanner, it will be your VIN, not just a generic VIN.
That's cool.
Just attention to detail. And speaking of detail, this is the machine that was used on the assembly line floors back then. This tag would have been in here, and someone actually sat here and on this keyboard sat there and typed all of the data that winds up belonging on the tag.
An addressograph.
Yep. Now, pause it. More and more stuff. This here is the actual an original box of door data plates that were used for the 75 to 79 trucks.
Really?
It's you'll see it's got the part number on it, and then the date this batch was made. There's 450 of them in here, and I found this in Detroit, and there they are. Those are all original tags that never got made into cars, or into trucks.
Really?
Now, what's interesting about them is that when they made the truck, it had this extra plate down here. They would stamp the information for the truck, just like on yours, and then they would stamp the same information down
For the
here
owner's card.
for the owner's card.
Yeah.
See, there's a little score line there, and then
I didn't realize that it was on the same tag.
it was on the same tag. Why not stamp them both at the same time?
Yeah.
And so they would just break the score and then stick this on the glove box owner card, which we also make those.
Really?
And so there you go. You just, I just think that that's such a neat little piece to think that somehow this managed to survive unused. Just got lost in the shuffle of things all those years ago.
I still find it amazing that, this is, because you can't really do this for any other brands. I mean, Ford, we're lucky that you do all of this, and we actually probably should get back into the story, because we started telling them a little bit about it, and then you were telling us about her, but we didn't actually get into how you got into this.
Okay, that's a good point. Lois is doing this all of these years, and Ford promoted it too. Like in Ford Times, whenever people, there was a Q&A section that would be in the little Ford Times magazine that they put out, and when someone asked a question that was relevant to those invoices or Thunderbird questions in particular, they would say, you can write Lois Eminger at box 220, and just so they were promoting her doing this, and over the course of time, she was selling all of these invoices, and my second car that I had, I heard about her and I wanted to get the invoice for it, and so I contacted her, and she couldn't find it. It wasn't in the files, but that's because she decided to reorganize. Instead of the numeric system that Ford had used, she pulled certain invoices out for certain kinds of cars and put them in separate file cabinets, and she forgot she had done that for mine. And so she would periodically write me back, because Lois was a prolific writer, and she would write me back saying, I'm sorry, I haven't found your invoice yet. And then one day I get a phone call, and it says, hi Kevin, this is Lois Eminger. And I think, oh, wow, because she was always this mysterious person that everybody would send money to, and then these pieces of original paper would come back, but nobody ever saw her. And
mystical.
And she actually calls me in, and it's like I'm starstruck. Wow, Lois Eminger called me, and she says, don't give this phone number to anybody.
Kind of like how you did the first time we spoke.
That's exactly right. Because I learned from her. Because originally she gave out her phone number, and people from Sweden would call her when it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And because it's a worldwide business, same kind of problem. And it's like, I do need my sleep. I do need my personal time. So no, I can't do that available. So she said, if you haven't heard from me, if you want, give me a call. Well, I didn't want to call her, but one day about 9 months later, I get an email, not an email, a regular piece of mail. I forgot, I was using mail. Get a postcard from her. She was on the Queen Elizabeth II when it was still sailing. And she says, I'm on the QE2, but I just wanted to write you, I found your invoice. And so I was excited. She sent it to me. And over the course of time, by now I had started doing the business of the Marti Report with Ford. And so I would go visit her at her place. And we started going out to dinner. We became good friends. And she'd tell me all these stories about the big guys at Ford, and just made a big mistake. I should have recorded every conversation. Record conversations of people. Because
I'm doing it right now.
you are. One day they're gone. One day I'll be gone. She is gone, and it's like I couldn't remember all the stories because it was her life, not mine. And so now I miss that. I just can't remember all of that. And she was such a nice lady. Shelley and I really treasured the friendship that we got to develop with her. Well, over the course of time, as she started getting more frail, we had talked about what would happen to these invoices, because she never remarried after her husband Wynn died, and so she didn't really have any children to take this project over. And she said, maybe you could. So I wound up buying them from.
And you're an engineer at this time.
I had already actually quit my engineering career I quit my engineering career in the 80s. This is in the this story with Lois is in the about 2005 time frame, and so I was this business. This is what I was doing. My hobby had become the business.
Okay.
And so I was doing this all full time now. But she had said, go ahead. Let's do this transaction. And so I bought all the invoices from her, and here they are. We've done everything we can to try to preserve as much of that as we could. Now, a few years before that, I had found out that Ford still had all their electronic data, and so I asked them, could we, by any chance, get access to these electronic records? I could see how useful this would be to the hobbyists out there. And of course, they had to go through all kinds of departments for clearance. And there's not another car company around that has released all of their production records.
No, not like this. I mean, you have the Pontiac stuff, but
that's the closest you got. But that's all manual paper stuff,
right,
not electronic data.
And then Dodge has some like Hemi stuff, but not everything. Not like this. I mean, it's
only the Ford family, and a lot of that is because the Ford family themselves are. I mean, they're the only car company still owned by the family members. They're passionate. They're proud of their name. They want it to be honored, and so they've done the best job of all of the car companies of the world to keep as much record keeping as possible.
Yeah, actually preserve it.
And we've been fortunate that we've got this relationship that's developed with them that gives us all of this access.
So how did it actually? How did it actually go down?
Well, it started with me writing a letter to the what did they call it? They had a different name for it instead of Customer Research Center, Customer Relations Center. But whatever the precursor name was for it, I had written a letter, and I got this response back. All I gave them was the VIN of my '67 Cougar, and when they wrote back, they had all this extra information on it. I go, how would they know that? You can't get that out of the VIN. And then I started thinking, the only way they could know that is if they have more information. And so that began me making a bunch of phone calls until I discovered the right department that happened to have the data, and they said, yeah, we've got all of that. And I said, well, what would take you a copy? Well, that's outside of our department. You'd have to, and then off with more phone calls, calling this department. Well, yeah, we could do that, but you'd also have to talk to, marketing department. Well, you'd have to talk to the legal department. You'd have to, and so for the next year and a half or so, we're kept asking around. Finally, lined up everything, got all of the departments all approved to sign off on this. We had already been involved with the Ford licensing program since '93, and this is about '96 that this is going on. And so the head of that department wound up creating a contract with me, just like the other contract we had for manufacturing the parts for the vehicles. They created an intellectual property contract with us, which is like that thick, and it's got so many little details what we can and can't do. We even have to answer the phone by the third ring, or it has to go to an answering machine. It's all about customer service and relationship, and so we do the best we can to provide for customers, as long as it's realistic, because no, we can't do certain things that people ask us to do. We can't change data. We've had people, oh yeah, but I changed the color of my car. We can't change that. This is a report of how the vehicle was.
You're listing facts.
That is what it is. It's a factual document. It's not a fantasy document of how you wish your car was. It's the actual Ford data as is. So now that we had all the approvals and that lined up, the next problem was getting all the data from Ford to us.
And this is 1996.
This is 1996.
So data back then on the computer was like floppy disks, and
it was, I had to buy an iOmega zip drive that would hold 100 megabytes.
100 megabytes.
100 megabytes. They were the first batch of data they were going to give us was 67 to 73, and the laptop computer that I brought with me, I had a little compact laptop, and it had an LPT1 port on it, which is what a zip drive did, and Ford had an LPT1 port. So we would plug the iOmega drive into that port. It would download 100 megabytes, and back then that took like 20 minutes just for 100 megabytes. Download that, then we'd have to plug it into the laptop, load it into there, unplug it, plug it back in, take the next 100 out, and the first day we were, the data guy and I were there for over 12 hours doing this, and we weren't even, we were just barely halfway done, and he said, well, tomorrow we can finish up the cars and then we can get all the trucks. And I said, I don't really want the truck stuff.
Why would you say that?
Because I was dumb. But he said, you have to take all of it. We can't do it where we can't take out bits and pieces of the data. So you're going to have to take all of it. And that was the best thing. Now, I'm so glad that they made me take that, because I was too dumb to see how important the truck guys are and how important, how fanatical they are. They're just as fanatical as the Mustang guy. You know, the Mustang guy thinks he's real serious about his car, and F-Series guy, he's just as serious about his truck. And so, fortunately, we wound up leaving there with all of the 67 to 73 car and truck data. And even when Now, the IT developers and the programmers and I, when we originally developed this, now, we were only running car reports. So then we'd get requests for a truck here and there, and we would manually pull up the data and manually type out a Word document, a report for a truck guy. So whenever I'd get a truck report, I'd kind of... But after about 5 years, I started realizing these truck guys are real serious, and they're becoming more and more serious, and it's becoming an ever-growing, it's the fastest growing group of vehicles. Is the F-Series. The Mustang is still biggest, but then the F-Series, and then the Bronco's just right behind it. It's no longer the Torinos and the Cougars and such. Those guys are slipped down into like 5th, 6th, 7th place. Yeah. So that's kind of how that all came about. After we processed all of that data, a few years later, we then asked for like the 74 to 79 data, and after we got done with creating all of the coding for that, we then moved on to like the next batch, and so on through the years. We've done this. We've been now doing this for 27 years.
Wow.
And we're only halfway done with the coding.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's various parts of the Marti report that still have to be done by looking things up manually.
Nowadays, with like AI technology, is there ever a way that you could start implementing that, or it's just too difficult?
There's bits and pieces of it can, but let me give you an example of how we can't. And that would be this. Ford, just like you do with your phone, you have phone numbers in there. One day a friend says to you, hey, I've moved and I got a new phone number. What do? You take out and go, what's your new address? And you type it in. You overtype the old address and you overtype the old phone number. So tomorrow if I asked you, what was the guy's address before, you wouldn't know anymore, would you? Well, Ford's the same way. For their record keeping, they don't know what the name of a dealer was back in 1978 or 1967. They have no idea. And one of the toughest things that is an ongoing process for us that's assisted by this is saying, what day did this dealer change from either ABC Ford to DEF Ford, or when did they move from 123 Main Street to 456 Central Avenue? When did that happen? And so we have computer code that's written that says, okay, we have this data point. We know at this point in time, because we looked at a record, it says on this date, this was the name and address of this dealer. 5 years later, this was the name and this was the address. What happened in between? So we play a game. You ever done that guessing game called higher or lower? I'm thinking of a number between 0 and 1,000. Your first guess is 500, and then I say higher, and then you say 750, and I say lower, and you just keep honing in to get the number. We're having to do the same thing with the invoices. We've got a 5-year gap. We know it changed, but we don't know when. So we go to the middle, and then we have the computer tell us what's a VIN that we have an invoice for. We go pull the invoice. We manually type that information in. Can't do that with AI.
Gotcha.
It's all manual.
Yeah.
It's all manual paper. And there's no practical. I've had people say, well, why don't you scan it? Because I've already spent well over $1 million making this available, and scanning 10 million documents.
It costs money.
At a nickel a document, well, you do the math.
Yeah.
And even then, when they scan, you then have to do an OCR conversion. And an OCR conversion doesn't always get every number and character correctly. It will make mistakes because it can't tell the difference between an O and a 0 at times. Well, we can't make that mistake. We have to have it exactly correct. Otherwise, the computer won't find something. It's like you guys that have the 77 trucks, whenever you wind up giving us a VIN, that the last 6 digits start, the way the first digit's a letter. Well, in 77 they used O. People typed in 0.
That throws it all off.
We can't find it. We come back with it's an. We actually had to write code saying if it's a truck that's a 77, and if it's got a 0 in this space, substitute an O and then see if we can find the record.
Probably finds it every time then.
Yeah.
Well,
so that solves that problem. But,
well, for the people that are curious what all you're talking about, how these invoices actually look, stacks and stacks of invoices,
Yep.
You busted out a stack of invoices.
I did. These are some 78 truck invoices.
And you got, this is literally,
Hundreds of them.
oh yeah.
And just fan through and you just see all these different models. This is 78s that were from the San Jose assembly plant.
That is amazing. So if one of these, if you have VIN number, where would it be?
Down here.
F35 JR, whatever, they could go on your website and they could get their dark brown metallic this physical invoice.
You could.
And you will ship it to them.
Yes. Now, I won't talk to you on the phone about it. You have to go to the website. I have too many people that want to make requests and they don't want to do it's like, I'm sorry, you got to do a little bit of the work. We can't do all the chasing around that. So we're asking you go to the website, you look and see if you put in your, we ask you, what's your year, what's your model, in this case F-Series, and what's the engine. You put that information in, then it asks for your VIN under certain circumstances, and then it'll say whether we've got it or not. Unfortunately, we don't have most vehicles because from 67 until current, we have 160 million electronic records, but we've only got 10 million invoices.
So what do you do in that instance?
We've got all the electronic data, so they can order a Marti report, or if they really want a window sticker, it's possible to produce. We can recreate an original window sticker. Ford licenses us to also do that. So here's an example. This is an original from 1977. This is one of our reproductions. You can see the paper's nice and brighter.
Oh yeah.
To it. But you'll notice details like this was the style of printing back then. If you notice, it goes up and down on the page a little bit. It was called daisy wheel printing, and it was a characteristic of the fonts that existed back then. So we have got all of that tech available to us to reproduce that so that it will look just like the original. We even, if you looked at these holes, these aren't just round holes. If you look at an original close up, you'll see that it's actually a little star pattern.
Oh yeah, you could see that.
And you'll notice that it's the exact same star pattern, right down to the number of tick marks on the star.
Really?
Because that's how
that's how Ford did it.
Detail.
Yeah.
That's why concourse quality, hobbyist price.
I love that.
We also like this. These are some examples of these. Happen to be 67 trucks.
Ooh, these are beautiful lunar green trucks. These are Wimbledon white and lunar. Oh yeah.
Yep.
That would have been a beautiful truck. Sold brand new in Colorado, Bellevue, Washington.
Yep.
So these are new
These
invoices.
are actually going to customers. These are ones that we pulled out of our batch that getting ready to ship out to customers. So we get a kick out of making those. Although here's a little point. Some guys will say, "Hey, how come there's no pricing on here?"
Oh yeah.
Well, if we look at this original, you'll see there is no pricing.
Why is that?
That's because federal law that required window stickers to be produced only required the cars to meet the requirements of putting the manufacturer's suggested retail price on them. The trucks weren't bound by that requirement, and so Ford didn't want to put it on because it gave the dealer that opportunity to do more playing. Negotiating is, I guess, the correct word to say, isn't it? The dealer could negotiate with with the customer, especially because a lot of trucks wound up having commercial use. You know, if like you ordered a fleet, and that you'd make deals to make breaks to get that guy's business, because you didn't want to buy in a fleet of Chevy trucks. You wanted him to buy a fleet of Ford trucks, and so this gave you a lot more flexibility on it. And that was just the way law worked back in those days. By the mid '80s, you'll start seeing truck prices on window stickers. But
these are 78s, and there's some pricings.
That's the dealer pricing.
Oh,
so this
gotcha.
is the retail price. You'll notice it's blank.
Gotcha. Okay. There's so much. I mean, it's taken you 30 years to know all of this. It's just incredible. 50.
I got 50 years into this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's still fun.
It's okay. You got the airport next door.
Yeah. Sound of freedom.
There you go. So what I know that you pulled out a couple of the parts you actually make. We didn't show it to them.
Yeah,
we should probably give them a show on that.
Walk back here.
I just love walking around in here. I mean, we might turn the camera off. I might not leave.
So, now we're licensed by Ford to also produce, as I've listed before, radiator hoses, fan belts, battery cables, spark plug wires, fuel lines, heater hoses, vacuum hoses, and such. And so this, for example, is used on a 6-cylinder 66 Ford truck. This was the style of lettering that was used back then. And so like the next year they switched to Autolite. So each year, whatever's the appropriate logo, because like the year before it was an oval Fomoco. So whatever's appropriate, we put the appropriate markings on. Then we also make fan belts. You can't even buy this fan belt anymore.
Really?
All the fan belts you buy are cogged.
Huh.
And we have a contract with Goodyear, and Goodyear actually uses their old molding equipment to still make this correct. Now, the cogged belt is actually a better belt.
Right.
It's more cooling.
But it's
if you
not
want
original.
the correct look, and you're not sitting there driving your truck every day, most likely. Now, although if you are, it'll last just as long as a belt did back then, and even longer, because the rubber technology has improved. This will go for 50,000 miles without any problem. But same thing, we mark the correct Fomoco, and this is, for example, a C4TE. This was first used on 64 trucks, and they even date coded it.
And what's nice is this piece right here says no tariffs.
That's exactly what it does say, doesn't it? I am a real believer. Everything we do is made in the United States. The contracts that I have with Gates and Goodyear, Prestolite, all of it requires all of the items to be made at their facilities here. Like Goodyear, they have a facility in Nebraska, in the Omaha area, and that's the only place. We won't accept their hoses that come from their Mexico plant. I'm not against that. It's just that if I have an American vehicle, I want it to have American parts on it. That's me. That's just
I agree.
the way we do things. This is what's going to eventually become a positive battery cable for a 67 through 69 truck. That was the way it was marked. We have the exact same printing equipment that was used back then. We'll eventually mold the lead head on the one end and then crimp the ring terminal on the other end, and then correct battery cable. Same with spark plugs. We make the spark plugs, and they were date coded 2Q70. That's second quarter of 1970, and these are Autolite, and then they have the cylinder number that was on them. Again, it's just everything is going to look just like an original. On 68 and later trucks and cars, they started stapling the clamp onto the hose. This was to speed up production. So an assembly line guy didn't grab a hose and then try to grab the right size clamp and then put it on and orient it correctly, because he's got less than a minute to do this. So This got rid of all the fumbling around. This way the clamp was already oriented exactly how they wanted, so they just did it, and then they just had a portable, speed screwdriver to just tighten them down. Just, ready for the next one. So just the improvements that were happening even back then with tech.
Well, I mean, we could probably keep talking and talking and talking about stuff over here, but I feel like we gave them a good amount of stuff.
I hope they enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun.
I know one question people always ask me is, why don't you have Mercury truck information?
We do have Mercury truck information. I think what you're thinking of is the 67 and 68 crew cabs.
Yes.
That were shipped to Canada.
Well, they were made in Canada.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I didn't say that right. They were actually made in Canada, but then shipped in Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
The Ford of Canada was a different company than Ford in the USA. They didn't keep good track of some of their records, and so even though we eventually wound up with all of the anything that was built, like at the Oakville plant, the St. Thomas plant, anything that was built at the 3 Canadian plants, we wound up with. But unfortunately, in '67 and in '68, up till about April. By April, they finally had gotten their act together, and so from April on, we have the data about if it was a crew cab.
So is that why you stopped listing the crew cab stuff for also on the Fords? On 67 and 68, we do not list as we will list that it's got the crew cab option, but not the number.
We know that. But we don't give you the production number because we don't know the total count. Neither does Ford.
Right.
Those records are gone.
Gotcha.
We wish we could. If someone has one of those, like sometimes we'll do a report for someone that has either a Ford or a Mercury, built in Canada, shipped in Canada, that's a crew cab, and of course it'll have a different wheelbase to it. They'll say, hey, my Marti report's missing the crew cab. Send us a picture of your data plate. When we verify that it really was a crew cab, then we'll go back and we go into the Ford data and we modify it to include that this was one of those vehicles.
Because I have some, it's funny how we'll keep the actual physical reports, because some of the old physical reports are a tiny bit different than the new modern reports. So now there's guys online that are putting old reports versus new. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
And all these conspiracies, and it's they just don't have exact data. He doesn't want to misrepresent it.
And it's like anything else. That's what I knew 25 years ago doesn't compare to what we've learned now. You learn new things, we make appropriate modifications, we make the improvements, we reflect as accurately as possible. It's just like going back to I will tell you that 25 years ago when we did the reports, we didn't begin to know. We didn't have access to all of these invoices, and so we didn't know the names and addresses of all of the dealers. At times, some of the reports would just have no dealer even listed there. Sometimes it might have a dealer, but it turned out that, 2 weeks later, they had actually moved, and we reported the old address. We didn't know. As we're getting dialed in more and more information, this is an evolving process. Now, at this point, I need to stay alive long enough. I'll do everything I can to be as careful as possible about staying alive long enough to get it all completed, because we do have a plan for this to be able to continue on past.
How many years young are you?
I'm 67, so
it's a good year.
It is a good year. I hope to have many more, but I do have an expiration date.
And we don't know when it is.
And we don't. So I just want to try to as well as we can, because I do view this as I'm a steward. I need to preserve this because someone else is going to take this over and then keep making this available. So when you've got things like the 100th anniversary of the F-Series vehicles, there's still someone out there that's able to help people out, because there's going to be the people that are going to still want to be restoring these trucks, putting things back the way they were originally. You know, so a lot of guys will rest them on them, but over the course of time, as they get older, there'll be people that will want to be putting them back. To originality becomes a.
I'm starting to realize that myself. Like, I used to be, tear everything up, make it, hot rod, and then now the more original the truck, honestly, like, it really starts to make me happy. Like that truck out there, it's like 85,000 original miles, and yeah, it's rusty in some spots, but it's a real truck. Everything works great. I could drive it, and it's only original once.
That's right. And see, I went through that phase. So I bought that 67 Cougar, and I found out about J.C. Whitney, and I got a hold of a J.C. Whitney catalog, and I put in the J.C. Whitney fog lights, and I put in the J.C. Whitney whinny horn, and I put in the J.C. Whitney traction bars, and I put in the J.C. Whitney lifts to get the rear leaf springs, so I had that rakish look. I did all of that stuff, but I got over that phase in about 1 year. So by the time I was before I was 18, I was already into originality. But I don't begrudge anyone that wants to customize. The nice thing is, your car, your truck, do what you want with them. Me, I just like seeing that was their vision back then. It's kind of like if I go to a Civil War museum, I don't want to see a modern version of a Civil War uniform. I want to see the old wool with cotton threading and know that these guys were itchy inside there. And these were real brass buttons on there. That's me. I want to see bullets that are laying around. I don't want them to be imitation bullets. I want to know those were bullets that got picked up off of battlefields.
Yeah, that's the actual Autolite, banner.
That is the banner. All of these banners. That's why they look kind of ratty. Some of them, the reason they're striped is because they were rolled up for years.
Yeah. So the sun only hit. Yeah.
That's right. The sun only hit part of it, or they just permanently, because they sat that way for decades. They took on that permanent striping.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fix that now. It's part of the story.
Well, for whoever's actually made it this long in the video, thank you guys so much for watching. If they don't know where to find out all the things about you guys, it's martiautoworks.com.
Just martiauto.com.
Oh, martiauto.com.
Yep.
And do you have anything else you want to tell them before we sign off?
Keep trucking. Make sure it's a Ford.
Heck yeah. So if you guys can, drop a subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what do you think about this, and like the video. We'll catch you in the next one.